This is the Rebel HR Podcast, the podcast about all things innovation in the people space. I'm Kyle Rode. Let's start the show. Welcome back, Rebel HR community. Very excited to continue the conversations here at the Iowa State SHRM Conference. We are here with Brianna Jacque. She is an employee benefits consultant with Cunningham and Butler. We're going to be talking about some exciting topics today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So happy to have you. She just wrapped a session about Iowa women's basketball. So very near and dear to my heart. Go Hawks.
Absolutely.
Sounds like it was a great session. I am curious to ask you this first question. What drove you to get into the thrilling world of employee benefits consulting?
Gosh, that is a loaded question, isn't it? I mean, I have been doing it for about 9 years. I was recently in a sales role in a totally different industry and was recruited to Cunningham and Butler's wellness company, Health Check 360, where I traveled across the United States consulting on just wellness programs. And I loved doing that, but I was held to just a product. And so I loved the idea of being able to consult on other things and help these employers out with other things outside of just wellness and well-being solutions. So I made the jump over to employee benefits, and I quickly figured out how many tools were in my toolkit, how many varying needs there were from various organizations and of all sizes. So we get to come in and help them design what an ideal benefits package looks like to them and their employees.
Awesome.
How often do you talk to a new client and they have no idea what resources and other tools are out there versus what's inside their four walls? Like how many times do you see eyes open and just like, wow, I didn't know that existed?
Yes, we see that quite frequently. And a lot of times where I like to start is really pulling back the curtains to uncover what they have to offer and how can we perhaps better utilize the services they have in place today with their various carriers and vendor partners, and then go dive into if there's an alternative solution that makes more sense to them. But it happens quite frequently to better educate these employers on all the tools that are at their fingertips. But again, HR professionals are focused on so many other things. They're understaffed. They have a lot of tasks that they're trying to work on while serving their employees. And so it helps to partner with someone like Cunningham and Butler that helps them navigate all their tools and how to capitalize on it.
So I think that's one of the things I wanted to talk about today. You know, we actually had this dialogue earlier in this session around leveraging your experts to help you make decisions, because many HR professionals are generalists, right? We're dealing with a lot of different aspects. All the while, we're trying to put out fires over here, make strategic decisions over here, manage perceptions over here, and then, oh crap, I need to figure out what my benefits package is and sign the renewal for next year. And it's one of like 27 different things we try to do throughout our day. And so, one of the things that I recommend is, lean on your experts, right? Lean on the Cunningham and Butlers and other benefits experts to help you make decisions. But one of the other challenges that I think we run into as HR professionals is an assumption of what our employees actually want. And I think that can be a little bit of a risky assumption to make at times. So what recommendations do you have for us as we try to consider not only what benefits do we think are appropriate, but as we consider what our employees actually want and need in a benefits package?
Yeah, and that is such a huge challenge, because oftentimes what you feel and what we see is that the loudest employee gets the resource that they're asking for. And right or wrong, there could be a more strategic approach to help you guide your decisions. And so it's really focusing on marrying together benchmark data, but then also surveying your people as well. So benchmarks are great, but it's assuming your company is like everyone else's. Surveys are too great, but oftentimes you get too much information, you don't know how to act upon it. And so trying to get a little more strategic and utilizing surveys that actually incorporate trade-offs, for example, because as an employee, we want it all. But we don't understand how our asks impact the business financially, uh, executing time-wise. And so actually having them choose, would you rather have benefit package A or benefit package B with varying features within your company's budget so that it's well designed from the beginning? So after the employees complete the survey, you then get actionable data to say, these are the benefits that make our employees the happiest. And where should we then go invest?
Yeah.
I love that you said the loudest employees trigger. It like triggers a reaction, right?
A visceral reaction.
For every HR listener out there, how many times has the loudest employee triggered you or your department to say, you know what? We should send that dress code reminder policy out.
Yeah.
Those damn loud employees.
Well, my reaction when you said that, I literally wrote down loudest employees and circled it in my notes because I'm like, I think every single one of us has this picture of at least one or two employees that just immediately pops into their head. For me, I'm looking at you, Rick, in your gray sweatsuit in every employee meeting, and you're pissed off about something, right? But the reality is, and I kid you not, I was in a meeting with 300 people, and he's up here and he's yelling about whatever. And literally, like, somebody turns around and goes, "Shut up, Rick." And so there's a great, a great reminder that, like, the other employees are like, no, he doesn't speak for us, right? But I think it's really important to remember that a lot of times that's who HR is interacting with, right? You're not usually interacting with the vast majority of people. You're usually dealing with people that are noisy, right? And so making sure that you hear all of the well-rounded feedback is important. So, and then you touched on something else that I think is really important, that what I call the big data conundrum, right? So you go do these surveys, you have these conversations, you do focus groups, whatever you do to solicit the data, the information, and then you almost have too much. So how do you recommend that we distill this information into actionable decisions, and then use that to inform how we go forward?
Yeah. So there are tools out there that will help you capture the data and then make it much more actionable. And I referred to the trade-off survey. So the concept is called a conjoint analysis. It's not a new concept by any means, but I think challenging the average survey, rate your benefits 1 to 5. That's where you get too much information that you just don't know what to do with. So I would say investing in a survey tool that captures actionable data that then helps you bring it to the leadership team to prioritize decisions moving forward based on the budgets that's been set and what is the highest priority for the bulk majority of the employees, not just those 1 or 2 employees that come running into HR. So I think it's trying to get your arms around. There's a lot of data. And in HR, you have access to the most data. And so trying to figure out how you capture that, pull it together into a story, approach the leadership team, very deserving a seat at the table, and then how to take action on it and think forward.
Right. Yeah, and I think what's so great about that approach, number one, I would also recommend, totally agree, don't try to do this yourself. Like, I've done that where, like, I try to do like a survey monkey with questions and like hope that I have something, and then you get these questions, you don't even know how to like interpret it or what to do, and it's not, like, leverage an expert to help you with it, and then leverage experts to help you understand it. But what you're really talking about is how do you not only get this data, but then how do you tell a story with it, right? How do you figure out what's the beginning, middle, and end? And then how do you drive decisions off of the story that the data tells you, right? So I think that's a powerful way to think about this type of information. And that's ultimately how you get people to buy in, right? Believe you.
Yes.
And before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about, the proverbial seat at the table. And, one of my arguments is if you know your data, and you know your business, and you know what your employees want, and you have a solution, now you essentially can't afford not to have a seat at the table. So how do you enable, in your role, HR to have that capability and that ability within their roles?
Yeah, I think it's educating on all the options that are out in the market and that come to fruition each and every single day. And knowing as a benefits broker that this may not be a solid solution for this HR professional and this team of individuals that you're coaching, but knowing that it may be in the future because of challenging times or situations that vary, especially in an economy with financial pressures left and right, educating on what's available based on the data. And so being able to effectively measure what is going on within your health plan also then prioritizes what decisions should come from there based on how your overall claims are performing. Who's driving this? Not just focusing on health insurance rates, but how do you focus on the overall risk strategy and mitigating those risks over time? And maybe putting programs in place that may not be a huge cost saver at the time, but oftentimes it could pay out in the long run. And so you're trying to mitigate the risk as much as you are driving costs down. And so I think pulling in multiple metrics to be able to benchmark you to you as well. Not benchmark you to the average company or the company nationwide, but benchmark you to based on your demographics, based on your overall claims utilization. Where are some strategies that we can then implement so that you can manage costs? And perhaps are you over-investing in some aspect of your benefits package that you could then reinvest somewhere else?
Right.
Do your employees value that very rich health plan design? Perhaps they don't. Perhaps it's attracting the wrong individual per se. Maybe you do need a plan that is more in line with benchmarks so that you can take those savings and reinvest it in additional PTO. Hey, other aspects of your overall benefits package that oftentimes gets mixed.
Right. Yeah. I think I love what you mentioned there at the end, because so often we get this short-sighted, myopic view of benefits, and we put it into these buckets, right? So you've got your health bucket, then you've got your dental bucket and your vision bucket. But the reality is, in the broad employee experience, they consider all sorts of different things benefits. Yes. So flexibility of schedule, PTO, pet insurance. There's all these random things that we consider ancillary or a different bucket, but it's all the same to employees, right? And if you don't think about it in that context, and you aren't proactive enough in how you budget, think about this with your teams, including finance, CEO, operations, all this stuff. You're gonna miss some stuff. Right? If you have the best health insurance program in the country and everybody loves it, but the PTO policy sucks, it doesn't matter. They still think their benefits suck, right? You could flip it around and say the exact same thing the other way. If they, love their dental plan, but they have no workplace flexibility and can't even take time off to go visit the dentist, well, then you're screwing up. Right? So you've got to think about it in this context. And this is where I would argue that HR needs to step up and advocate for these types of things on behalf of their employees. I think it's part of our job.
You can have the best benefit package in the world, but if it's not coupled with a solid employee engagement strategy,
right,
you're going to lose people. People are going to be unhappy.
Right.
And so benefits is just one piece of the total rewards pie, if you will. And so trying to figure out not only what your employees value, educating your employees on why a company has made a decision to invest in said benefits. For example, I don't think any of your employees are going to come to you because of a long-term disability program, but if you educate on why you have such a strong long-term disability coverage and really how it fits the overall culture, employees will find value in that.
Right.
And so oftentimes it's educating on why the company is investing in this.
Absolutely.
So I have a question over there. So my role, Kyle mentioned this earlier in another conversation. We've been in HR a long time, a lot of us have. And
I just started a few years ago.
My role specifically is a benefit leader, but benefits is a big word to understand, right? And I'm not a medical claims expert. Nor do I need to be. And it still confuses me to this day. And my organization has a relationship with Brianna's organization. They help me through all these questions to help educate the employees. When you talk about that whole employee value, what an employee value proposition strategy, how does one start to do that, to tell that story of this is what we already have and we think it's pretty good? How do you start?
You know, oftentimes people think benefits are just communicated one time a year during open enrollment. However, life happens, things change. You do need to consistently educate employees throughout the year on the valuable benefits, because things may happen in April when they went through open enrollment in November. They don't remember all the offerings we have in place today. So I think it is pulling in probably some benchmark data to say, like, hey, this is where we compare to others of a certain industry, for example. But also just educating on why we feel that we are investing in certain benefits and why it's important. Especially in this generation where we've got 5 generations in the workforce. So especially in this workforce where people want to come to work and be a part of something bigger than they want to have meaningful work. They want to be very well appreciated both inside the 4 walls of the workplace and outside. So it's also understanding that employees' needs vary and offering a comprehensive benefits package that meets employees where they are in their life. So understanding that, yes, perhaps accident insurance isn't the best fit for someone right now, but as they have a couple kids involved in sports, like that is a nice offering that a company has as part of their rounded out benefits strategy. So I think it is, and educating through multiple facets too. We put together these wonderful employee benefit guides, and we hope everyone reads them from start to finish, but they don't. So
sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but yeah, that 37-page booklet, yeah,
It's
sure.
34. Your communications team did that. But no, it's great. It is great. We do educate to new hires, and we love it, and it's a beautiful document. What's overwhelming, right? How do we do that better? Like,
yes. And tapping into your leadership team to help communicate from the top down of why a benefit is so important. Goes a long way, goes further than just saying, hey, we offer this 401k plan and we match up to a certain percent. But if you've got your CEO standing in front of the company to say, who wants to be a millionaire by the time they retire? This is how you do it. People learn differently. You've got 5 generations in the workforce, and so you do have to have multiple forms of communication to see what's going to stick.
Yeah, I am curious from your seat, because you have to see this all the time. When you're out there talking with clients or prospective clients, do you run into, I can imagine you run into quite a bit, the people picking the benefits are probably the HR people or the CEO that want the benefits they like versus thinking about the other 300 to 600 employees that will also have these benefits too. Do you ever run into that? Like, well, you got to think about your total workforce.
Yes, absolutely. And it is challenging because HR and leadership does have to play a little bit of God to pick 1 to 2 plans that's going to fit a bulk majority of the organization or ones that they enjoy or the loud employees have asked for. So it is challenging to try to reframe some mindsets that you are making the decision for the workforce, that they are boots on the ground. They have different needs. They have different scenarios and perhaps a different financial situation. And so trying to encourage them to think of and put themselves in the shoes of their employees. We do. It is challenging. And so that's where our job comes in, that we just educate on what other employers are doing, what we're seeing, what bringing strategies to the table to say, hey, we do think at implementing this strategy could drive down cost X percentage, but also here's the impact to your workforce. And marrying the financial component with the employee disruption component or the employee value component it usually goes a long way.
Yeah. So, great example of that. So I had to do that a number of years ago where we had different tiers of plans for disability, time off, personal time for like executive managers and, non-managers. And we killed it all and we had to take away benefits from some of our senior leaders, but we just cost justified it, right? And by doing that, we were able to give a richer benefit to non-managerial staff. But it was, it was definitely some change management, but it took that, kind of that data perspective, and it was a budgetary conversation that, hey, we need to do this in order, using benchmarks, in order to kind of meet the benchmarks for our team. But that means you guys don't get this extra special, short-term disability bucket. You're in a different short-term disability bucket, but that means everybody now gets short-term disability paid, right? So it was definitely, some cost justification, but the reality is, it was the right decision. It was the right thing to do. And yeah, having that data, telling the story with it, and justifying that for the greater good, that's part of what HR's job is, right? We need to advocate for what's right. So that being said, I have one final question for you. Where do you think HR needs to rebel?
Where do they need to rebel? I think at the end of the day, they are the voice for their employees. And so being an advocate, even more than they are today, but trying to utilize data on what is going on within our benefits, where could we more effectively allocate some of these funds that employees will find more value in, and trying to bring a solution that really makes the workforce happy, but it's within the budget of the organization. And I think just understanding that they have all of the data, and to partner with the right benefits consultant to help bring the story together, to articulate the message, to then drive which priorities to execute on first.
Absolutely. Great conversation. Where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your organization?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. So Brianna Jacque, again, employed at Cunningham and Butler. You're welcome to email me as well, or give me a call.
All right. We'll have that information in the show notes. Feel free to open up your podcast player. Check it out. Brianna, thank you so much for joining us. Great conversation.
Thank you.
All right. That does it for the Rebel HR podcast. Big thank you to our guests. Follow us on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, Twitter at Rebel HR Guy, or see our website at rebelhumanresources.com. The views and opinions expressed by Rebel HR Podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any of the organizations that we represent. No animals were harmed during the filming of this podcast.
Baby.